And so please, could I welcome the founder and the Managing Director of Meriton, Harry Triguboff, AO. Harry, welcome. Take a seat.
Thank you, thank you.
Good to see you, hey? Hey, what do you reckon about that? The Commonwealth Bank, 4.99% fixed for 5 years. Not a bad rate.
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy to get them down, you know. Had to first of all work on the Reserve Bank for a few years, as you recall, but anyway, we got them there.
You got them there. I mean, you talked to me about this. You always said low interest rates was the key to try and get Australia moving again. But even in your business, I mean, to borrow at these types of rates, it's almost ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, what's happening now is that we have to grow, because not to borrow money at these rates, it's sacrilege. You must borrow. So we must all grow. So this is my word to you. Don't be scared. I don't think that the interest rates will go up much or they won't go down much. They're about where they are. So it's a very good time to grow and to keep property so that you don't have to pay too much tax. Very good.
That's a good thing. All right, let's go to this other part about this, because I can also remember you telling me over the years that banks, you were always very wary about banks because they had a tendency to pull the rug out from under you when you least expected it. So you're telling people here in this room to borrow lots of money, but you've always told me, be a bit wary of those banks. Where's the balance here?
Right. I think the banks have come a long way since the early days. Because when I started to build, banks would say they have no money. In fact, I was that small, and they would come to me for money to lend to them. That's how silly they were. So those days have gone. So you're dealing with a different person. But to succeed with banks, one must always treat them as a partner. And he must always know your business. If he knows your business, then you're halfway there. But your business must be sound, though, by the way. It's no good if your business is no good, you can't do it. But if your business is sound, you talk to the bank, then I think you have nothing to worry about.
So in that regards, now you would consider your bank as your partner. Do you trust your partner?
Well, I think I trust the bank because they told me many years ago when they were bullying me, and then I told them that they can go and run the business without me, that it was unfair. So you must make sure that they think and they know that you're essential for the business. Then you definitely can trust them even more.
It's a good point. Tell me about those days. Tell me about the days in the 1990s when the recessions came and the interest rates went to 17%. Did you ever have a moment where you wondered whether your business was going to survive?
No. I should have thought that there was a problem, but I never did, because I came every morning and I worked out the problem of yesterday, and then after a while you get together with the people who are with you. So it wasn't such a big problem. It's the first shock which is the worst thing, that one day they run after you and the next day you're a crook or an idiot or whatever, it doesn't matter. And they send a new guy that you never saw before. I mean, that's a shock. But after that, you work it out and you show to them that they're safe. And once you can convince them they're safe, they're even better than ever.
So given the fact that we have come through more than 20 years without a recession, we've got record low interest rates in Australia, you say that there are good years in front of us again. Do you think many people in Australian business, many younger business people under the age of 40, 45, do you think that they become a bit complacent about what's available in Australia and the good conditions that we've had? Or is it simply that older Australians who have been a little bit shell-shocked, beaten around the head by recessions, should get used to these good conditions? What is it?
I think the good conditions are in front of us, because Australia is part of the world. It's not like before we were isolated. Now we're part of the world. Now they're trying to help America and Europe to get on. China is galloping ahead. Japan saw that staying behind doesn't work. So when you look at what the whole world is doing, then I think we're quite safe in thinking that we will be okay. Nothing is forever, of course, but in the foreseeable future, it looks as though it's safe.
All right. Now, I know, say, for example, that good mate of yours and mine, John Simon, the founder, the executive chairman of Aussie Home Loans, you used to do a bit of business with him, didn't you?
Yeah.
Explain what sort of business was that?
John, where's John? John. Well, when we started, the big problem was to find money for the purchasers. And John had a business in Parramatta, and we always knew that if there was a way to find for the people to get finance, it was to send them to John. And so that's the way it was, because he always had the connections with all the lenders. And it was a very close relationship. I remember his wife, I remember all of them. Yeah. So it was good fun. We really had a lot of fun together. We were very close.
What happened when you had a purchaser that he couldn't get finance for? What happened then?
Well, I think then it was pretty tough. I had to find another purchaser.
Because that's the issue, isn't it? You have also grown with the population of Australia. And as Sydney has grown and as our other cities have grown, the capital cities have grown, you've been able to grow. You've been able to grow the scale and the size of your developments. You've been able to grow, if you like, the bets you've been able to take. I mean, do you believe that your success has come through the change of our cities or simply by the natural increase in Australia's population?
Both. Now, for me to grow, for any of you to grow, the city has to grow. And this is what happened, and we have had continuous growth. If you look at our immigration figures, then you'll see that we have always increased all the time. It's not that one day we have less, one day more. It's more or less the same way, which is very good. It's very easy then to tackle the situation. Now, the reason my business has grown so much is because the apartment part of the accommodation has grown so much, and it will grow a lot more. And the reason is very simple. A lot of people today rent. Now, it is very hard to have a cottage and rent it out. It's a lot easier to have an apartment and rent it out. So the people that will be renting will mostly come to us. I don't know, 90% will come to us, which they will miss out. Now, mind you, the cottage builders have come a long way. A few years ago, they built real rubbish. Now they're building good. And they have little shopping centers next to them, and they got roads next to them, which helps. But we're very happy if cottage builders grow as well, because the more they grow, the more we will grow, because their people will come to work where we live, where we build. So then the other thing that we have in the apartments lot is that we have serviced apartments, which is a very big field. So we didn't only change the way people think in where they live, in a house or in an apartment, but we also taught them that serviced apartments is the way to go and not the hotels. Because we could provide more accommodation and cheaper accommodation in a serviced apartment. Now, it never made sense to me why people would live in a 3-bedroom cottage and then go into an hotel and stay in a studio apartment. So I always wanted them bigger. Not that big, but bigger. And also, no point of giving them a lot of service. So that's why we went for the service apartments. And you can see that in the last 10 years, the buildings were all in serviced apartments. They were not in hotels. So the point is right. The other good thing about serviced apartments is that for some unknown reason, we are quite competitive on the world stage. If you go around the world, you'll see that you'll pay practically the same amount. So and then the Chinese, of course, as usual, come to our help. They come here just to breathe and see the fresh air and blue skies and the sea and be happy here. So I think that for that reason, I'm a great believer in apartments.
All right, so you believe in the apartments. Just on one thing, you picked up that serviced apartments there, right? Now, the serviced apartments, I remember having a conversation with you at one stage where you explained to me that when you first came to these serviced apartments and the concept of the serviced apartments, it was almost a bit of an accident. You were a bit desperate at the time because you had some apartments that you wanted to sell and you couldn't sell them. Explain that story. How did that work?
Right, okay. So, now, Surfers Paradise is quite different. Gold Coast is quite different from Sydney. It's a lot smaller. And the people have always been very enthusiastic about building apartments, which they did. So if you're part of it, then you must go along with them. You can't just know exactly the moment to stop and the moment to start. There's an overlap. So that overlap was when we could not make any profit by selling our apartments. So I had 400 apartments in Broadbeach. I took 200 as residential, and I took 200 as serviced apartments. The residential rent was so low that it was hardly worth renting them out. The serviced apartments was quite good. So eventually, I had 400 of them, all in serviced apartments, and they're doing very well. So sometimes it's also good to remember, if you're in the right position, you might get out of it by having serviced apartments.
So that's how it started. Gold Coast, because you were a bit desperate, you needed to find an answer. But now, as you've pointed out, right throughout Sydney, this is now the way in which a lot of property developers, including yourself, will actually go and fund and finance, and right from the outset of that development, you will start it with that way. It's a different way of living for people. It's a different way of thinking for developers, but also the people who live in them.
Very different. We don't only depend on tourists. Our main customers are local people. They want to go out at night. They're scared of the bus buses. I mean, we must have bus buses going on forever. That's a very good thing for us. So then they stay back, you see. That's one reason. Then others, they might live far away and they live in the city, so they don't want to travel far at night, so they stay overnight in the city. Then, of course, we have people from interstate. They come a lot. Sporting activities is a very big thing, too. In places like Parramatta, sporting activities have really helped a lot. Because the problem before with the serviced apartments was we were full during the week, but we were empty on the weekends. Now that the sporting activity is so great there, we can fill it up throughout the week. It's very important. And theater. People like theater, and they create a lot of business for us too. Strangely enough, the ships that come with travelers, they create business too. Because before they go on the ship, they stay with us. After they come back off the boat, they stay with us, so it creates also business.
So in other words, it's actually changed the nature of the way in which it's worked, and even the dynamic of the city, because it means the city is more alive for more of the weekend with
Definitely.
more people around the place. That's for restaurants, that's for the theatres, that's for the sporting bodies as well. I want to go to another thing, because clearly our cities have grown. We've talked about that. But if you go and stand on the outskirts of our city, if you go to Oran Park, you go to Thornton out near Penrith, you go out into the ponds in the northwest of Sydney, you go to some of these amazing places, you can literally see houses galloping across the paddocks. It's almost as though they're being built so quickly as our city expands. We know that by 2060, Sydney will have 7 million people in the city of Sydney. I mean, it is a phenomenal thing to contemplate. The question is whether you think that opening up of land by the state government, whether that has been a progressive thing, or whether you think long-term, ultimately, they would have been built a better building up closer to the city. Which would have been better?
I think we should have both, probably. But in the high-rise will win. There's many reasons. You say about government selling land, but they're also selling land now for apartments. Ryde Council has sold a few thousand apartments to be built on their land, which is very good area and very, very, very successful. But also, the new thing will be that we will make our buildings higher. For instance, where we had before an approval for 10 stories, we might have in future an approval for 30 stories. So we'll put 20 stories on top of 10. So we don't even have to find new land. That'll happen too.
Where do you reckon that'll happen first? You got any ideas about that?
I don't know.
Come on, Harry. Where's it going to happen first? You tell me. There's nobody listening.
The city, obviously the city.
Opposite the city.
City.
In the city itself. So you reckon you'll take existing 10-storey buildings,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to build on top of those 10-storey buildings. The David Jones store would be one very good example about that. We've talked about that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's
But
why
you reckon you might have a few in there as
David
well?
Jones is not worth anything for his textile. He's worth for the building. That's all he got.
Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. So do you think, who's going to develop those? Is it people like you who will develop those?
Yeah. We'll all develop them. Yeah. Why not? We'll go for it. Yeah. Because you see, they used to have crazy rules. I used to have a building in front of me which used to obstruct the sun from the park. So then I had to go lower than he was. So I said, well, what happens? You know, it's crazy. These rules will all be changed. You'll be able to obstruct the park. Everything will change. It has to change.
So Sydney itself, I mean, there's been a lot said and written even in recent days about the fact that height levels in Sydney have got to grow, that Sydney's got to almost grow up as a city to give the encouragement for more apartments. When we build these new towers on top of existing buildings, do you believe that, is it a situation where Sydney grows up very quickly? Is there a demand, or is it going to be office buildings you see, or is it residential? Do you think it's residential that becomes a part of it?
We have to go back a little bit historically what happened. The politicians felt that they had to apologize that people would live in apartments and not in houses. The politicians had to apologize that space which could be office blocks were apartments. So everything was zoned against us. Well, now what happens is the offices with the views can no longer compete with the same areas that could be used for apartments. So we are changing them. You will soon see that offices with views will become apartments. As a rule, some will remain, of course. So that's a tremendous amount, and that is, you don't have to find new land for that. The buildings are there. All you have to do is change the tenants. And of course, with all the machinery and everything available for offices, and the way people run offices. Today you don't have a man in an office. Today you have an open office, and there are 10 people sitting all around it. So you don't need much room for them. And so definitely this is another source of area which will be used for apartments.
It's going to be astonishing to see that, because that's going to take a long time to develop. Tell me one thing, Harry. How old are you now?
81.
81. You look pretty good. How are you feeling?
I feel very well. Yeah.
You're feeling well?
Yeah, very well.
And what, fired up to get up in the morning and go and build some more apartments?
Yeah. I get in the morning. I come in the morning, and as the day goes by, I get more and more fired up.
It's
And
good.
then I come home, and I go and sleep.
That's good. So, all right. So, who are the people who are stopping you from being able to build more of these apartments more quickly to provide the accommodation for the future growth of Australia's population?
Oh, that's a sore point. So we got any amount of customers, that's not the problem. Because we today build not only for Sydney or in Australia, we build for the whole world, because not everybody, many people want to come here. The money is no object, the interest rates have come down. The unfortunate part are the councils and the bureaucracy. And this is something we have to do something about. Nobody would ever think of punishing a bureaucrat for producing little. Everybody would punish him if somebody could somehow think that what he did was not exactly honest or correct. More importantly, not even honest, correct. Now, when they talk about what's correct and not correct, it's the biggest falsehood I've heard of. I had the best time of my life when the state government was fighting the council. So how could both be correct when they were fighting each other? So it's the way you interpret. But they have tremendous power, and that power is used wrongly. First of all, they waste a lot of time. Everybody has to tick off the development. It's not only the council people, but also the railways and the water board, electricity, sewer, everybody. And everybody has a length of time in which he can or not approve. So we are waiting for everybody to approve this little piece. All right. Eventually it's approved, thank God. Then we are forced to put garages under the ground. Now, years ago, we didn't know how to do it, so nobody put garages underground, everybody was above ground. But now we're very clever. We can excavate well, we can pump the water out well, so suddenly we build underground. Tremendous waste of time, and we encounter work which requires remediation, because nobody knows what's under the ground. It used to be before, people used to just dump rubbish there. Now it's the best land in Sydney. Then they have the drainage line, which goes across the block when you want it to go along the block. So you have to turn. All can be fixed easily by having it above ground. Now, all these matters we bring to the attention of the government, state government. State government wants to do everything, change everything. They work for 2-3 years trying to change everything. They come to the upper house and can't get through anything. Now we got a new state government and they're telling me they'll change everything. Now, really, the way it will change is not to change everything in one hit. It has to be changed gradually. And it is changing gradually, but very, very slowly. So when they will understand the problem and see the urgency of the problem, because I say that every unit that cost me to build 350,000, 100,000 of that could be knocked off immediately if they were reasonable. And that 100,000 is just wasted, good for nothing. So I think that this is something that has to be tackled. And many of you are builders and you would know just as well as I do, and you must agree with me. So we should build above ground, and then they come up with crazy guarantees. They want all the guarantees in the world that we will do this, we'll do that, and this big sums of money. And to get it out of the council back is a big problem. Because again, everybody among them has to tick. 10 people tick, 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 and we wait and we argue and we do it, we argue, we run around. But that's just a mechanical problem. But the big problem is what I've just discussed that. Otherwise, they have also ideas that you must always have sunshine, and then we might have sunshine, then in front of the window we put a big tree, so I don't know where the sunshine will come. But that doesn't matter. That's a second process, you see, so that's allowed. So, I mean, they have to be practical.
All right. I want to ask you
I think that's enough here.
an important one here, Harry, and I think this has dominated headlines around Sydney, New South Wales, Australia for that matter, and that is the Independent Commission Against Corruption. And also then the banning of property developers making political donations. And clearly that has had a significant impact on this state government. What's your feeling about A, those bans on political donations by property developers, and B, the exercise inside the Independent Commission Against Corruption?
Right. Now, I say that nobody should give donations. Doesn't matter what they do. Nobody should give donations. Now, to say that property developers can't give and others can give, that's nonsense. So, if we think that the property developers are dishonest, then we must also understand that the people in the councils are also dishonest. you can't be one honest and one dishonest, can't make a deal. So both are no good. So please don't blame us, and don't blame them. This is exaggeration. Now, what is a property developer? A guy can go and build a block of 12 flats, he becomes a property developer. He's not a property developer, he's just trying to make a buck once in his lifetime. They're not property developers. They're the ones that cause lots of problems. Now, so the big problem, though, with this fear is that the councils, many of them, and when I talk councils, it doesn't mean every one of them is like that. They're different ones. And that was always the beauty of Sydney. So I was used to build where it was not easy to build with them. The ones that make problems, you never buy them, you don't touch them. So, anyway, so that's why they refuse to talk to us, because they're scared. And when we go to see them, it must be with some people and what you discuss and what you don't discuss, and everybody is scared to talk. Now, because of all the big changes that have to be done in the Department of Planning, it is imperative that they speak and speak and speak so we can get it right. But if we're going to be scared because maybe somebody is a crook or not a crook, then we can't do it. You have to work with us because we are the only people you can work with if you want development, and we must trust each other, and everything will be a lot easier.
See, it's a really interesting perspective on that, because ultimately, as we've pointed out, if Sydney becomes a city of 7 million people, you need to have somebody building the accommodation. There's already a shortage of accommodation in Sydney, and that will continue as the population grows, notwithstanding the release of land or even the release of land in our inner city to build high-rise apartments. Question for you, Harry. You said you're 81, you're vibrant, you like doing it. How long can you keep doing this for?
I don't think about that. I just go and do it. and you should all do it. I'll tell you, when I was 35, I'll tell you how the country has changed. We talk about buildings changing, as the philosophy changed. And people used to come up to me and say, why do you work so hard? You already got a bit of money. So I didn't listen to them, I worked. When I was 65, they came to me and they said, why do you work so hard, Harry? You know, you have enough. You've worked hard enough. You should stop. And I didn't stop. And when I become 80, then the guys of 80 tell me how clever I was not to have stopped.
Could I just say, as I told you in the introduction, the brilliance about interviewing Harry Triguboff and listening to him is that he's not frightened. The fact is he's not frightened of hard work, he's not frightened of speaking his mind, and he's not frightened of taking a risk. And the brilliance about Harry Triguboff is he's not frightened at the age of 81 to dream of the future. And that's what every one of us should take inspiration from today. Harry Triguboff, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.